What's going on, guys? My name is Trevor. Welcome back to the channel. The Marvels hits theaters this past weekend, making it the 33rd MCU movie, and in honor of that, we are ranking all 33 of these movies and placing them on their proper tiers. Let me know your ranking down below in the comment section, and what did you think of the Marvels? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I wasn't really a fan. Let me know your thoughts on the movie down below, and what is your favorite and least favorite MCU movie, and let's hop into these tiers. And for these tiers, we're actually going the traditional route. So we have the S tier, the A tier, the B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. All pretty self-explanatory. These movies are in no particular order. First up, the first Iron Man. If you go back and watch the first Iron Man, it's just like so low stakes. It's just kind of like a hero's journey becoming. It's one of the best origin stories ever for a superhero movie. For that reason, I'm putting it in the A tier. Doesn't have some big, crazy, like, third act ending. Doesn't have anything too outlandish throughout this movie. It's just like Tony Stark becoming Iron Man. It's fun. Robert Downey Jr. crushes it in this role. No one knew how he was going to do. And my goodness, did he take this role and just run with it. It's got to be A tier. Then we have Avengers Age of Ultron. A tier. I'm a huge defender of this movie. It's one of my favorite MCU sequels. I just love the Avenger movies. If there's just only movies I could watch throughout the MCU, I would probably just pick the 4 Avenger movies because of how much I love them. And Age of Ultron, I think, is criminally underrated and overhated. Ultron, a damn good villain. He gets these Avengers really down in the dumps. He really gets them to turn against himself. The Hulkbuster versus Hulk scene is absolutely great. Quicksilver, you didn't see that coming. Getting introduced to Wanda, I mean, it hits on all these different levels. I absolutely love it. You get so much more into Hawkeye, one of my all-time favorite characters. So this movie does a lot for me and puts a big smile on my face. And I'm a defender, and I always will be. Then we have Avengers Infinity War. I've seen this movie 50 plus times. It is arguably my favorite movie of all time. So for that reason, it's got to go in the S tier. Do you guys remember how hype the MCU was back then in 2018? It's before they had recliners. It's before they had like reserved seating. I got to the theater 2 hours early, and I was like 40th in line. Over 200 people in the auditorium for this movie. We had merch on. We were buying drinks. We were buying popcorn buckets. And when we saw this movie, I literally to this day have never been in a theater this electric ever. When all the characters started disappearing at the end. The theater, you could just hear the gasp for air when Peter Parker says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, I'm sorry," and he goes. My goodness, the freaking tears were flowing, and this has some of the most epic hero entrances ever. When Captain America comes off behind the train, he catches the spear, he comes in, theater was roaring. When Thor lands in Wakanda, though there's no reason for him to land in Wakanda, he had no idea even what Wakanda was, but when he shows up there, it is absolutely epic, and it's awesome. And what a way to introduce the best villain probably of all time in Thanos in that opening scene. My gosh. Then we have Avengers Endgame. Going in the S tier as well, this movie is just fire. And like every time I go back and rewatch it, it is a little bit slower, but I just appreciate how slow it is. And I appreciate all these characters coming back together to work together. Tony and Steve, I love these characters together, and we hadn't seen them together since Captain America Civil War, and you just kind of forget how well they work together. So when they're on there and their time travel missions, I mean, it's great. It's absolutely hilarious. And that third act, to this day, is perfect. Then we have Thor the Dark World. I'm not lying to you. I probably haven't seen this movie since like 6 years. 6 years probably, I'll say. So for that reason, it's going to go in the F tier. Not a problem, but just not want to go back and rewatch a lot often. Thor Ragnarok. I really enjoy this one. I like the comedy beats. I think it's a little too funny at times, but I really like Hulk and Thor running around Asgard together. Hela, a solid villain. She's badass for sure. Thor loses an eye, but he gets it back in Infinity War, but he loses it here. I'm going to go B tier for Thor Ragnarok. It's still a good, fun time. My name's Cole, I'm of Rooks. Then we have the first Guardians of the Galaxy going in that S tier as well. This movie, no one knew it was going to work. I didn't even watch this one in theaters. I'm still kicking myself for it. I had a bunch of friends tell me, like, "Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy?" I was like, "I'm not seeing that. It looks dumb." Well, I'm the dumb one because it is absolutely perfect. The soundtrack, absolutely great. These characters are so different and so weird. You have a talking raccoon, a talking tree, Drax the Destroyer. Nothing gets over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I'll catch it. And Star-Lord being the man he is. And Chris Pratt, I mean, he's absolutely great. I love it. And we have the first Ant-Man. Ant-Man to me is really just like a low-stakes movie. It's fun because I like Scott Lang, but like, and overall, I'm not the biggest Ant-Man franchise fan. For that reason, I'm going to go B tier. I could even go C, but I'll just go B. Very low-stakes movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I got to go D tier. I think it's better than Thor: The Dark World, and this is the one movie that came out after Infinity War, and you were expecting just something so much better because of the high you came off from Infinity War, and no, didn't get it. But Ant-Man, again, he's fun enough, and I just realized this, but how this is going to work is, like, my all-time favorite's going to go in the S tier, my all-time least favorite, like my bottom 5 will go in the F tier, and Ant-Man and the Wasp just clears the bottom 5. Then we have the first Doctor Strange. I'm going C tier. I always hate on this movie, but the more I think about it, the more it does have enjoyable elements. Dormammu, I've come to bargain, but to see Stephen Strange actually be like, to see Stephen Strange just get humbled like this and then have to go on this soul-searching journey, it's solid enough. It's better than Ant-Man, it's better than Thor. Gotta put it there. Then we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Huge defender of this movie as well. I loved it when I saw it in theaters. I saw it in my senior year of high school. And it's just one of those movies that hits hard because of the emotion it has behind it. When Yondu goes, and Ego, I think, is an underrated villain. And A tier. I know everyone hates Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or likes to, but for me, it's got to be A tier. And we have Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is very flawed, 100%. So many things with it that just don't make sense. The Mandarin is not real. Taking away Tony Stark's powers, giving Pepper Pot powers. All that puts it in the C tier. One of those movies I was excited to see, and I enjoyed it because the third act does have some really cool elements. But other than that, it's just, anytime you go back and rewatch this movie, you're like, Shane Black, just, what are you doing? Spider-Man Homecoming. A tier. Spider-Man Homecoming is one of those movies that could damn near be in the S tier. And you know what? I think we're just going to put it in the S tier because how much I love this one. One of my all-time favorite Spider-Man movies. I didn't want to see. I did not see this one in theaters either. Watched it at home. I think I rented it from Redbox. And I was like, I don't know how it's going to be. And when Michael Keaton's Vulture, one of the best villains inside the MCU. Tom Holland, my all-time favorite version of Spider-Man. And when Vulture opens that door, I mean, to this day, arguably the greatest plot twist of all time. Tony Stark, the 8 minutes he's in it, just... He shines. He shines. Spider-Man Far From Home. D tier. One of my least favorite sequels inside the MCU. I cannot stand this movie. Every time I go back and rewatch it, I can't even finish it. And it's in D tier. First Black Panther. I'm going to go B tier. The more I watch this movie or go back and rewatch it, it's just not all that rewatchable. It has some really cool like world building with Wakanda and everything like that. Killmonger is a solid villain, but it's a B tier movie. Then we have the first Captain Marvel. F tier. I have not got back to rewatch this one since probably one time since the theaters, and I probably won't watch it for a long time. Black Widow. Black Widow is not great. There's definitely some problems with it, and the CGI in the third act isn't all that good. But it's definitely not as bad as some people make it see. I think it is a top of the B tier movie. It's a B tier movie. It's a prequel. We all know that these characters are either going to live or die if we don't see them again. Taskmaster, awful villain, but it's about the family throughout this movie. Yelena, absolutely great character being added in there. Red Guardian, one of my all-time favorites. To see them in the Thunderbolts whenever we get it, I'm very excited for it, but Black Widow, I think, gets way too much hate. I think this movie was long overdue. Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings. This is one I don't go back and rewatch nearly as much as I should. I saw it twice in theaters. A tier. Arguably one of the funniest MCU movies, I think criminally underrated on its humor, but Shang-Chi, Simu Liu plays his character so well. He's one of the most cool, badass characters inside the MCU and has a really bizarre third act, and that really took me out of it a little bit with the whole dragons flying around, and you have one of the greatest villains in Wenwu, and then you kind of kill him. It doesn't sit well with me, but the entire ride and the journey, the world building, the creating, the culture behind this movie, that's what makes me love it so much. Eternals. F tier. These characters are great. It would have worked so much better as a series if they gave us this 2.5 hour long movie. I thought was going to be Best Picture nominee, and it's one of my least favorite MCU movies. You can expect my disappointment. Spider-Man No Way Home. S tier. I saw this movie in theaters, and I remember at this theater, it was full of people dressed up as Spider-Man. I've never been in a theater this loud ever, and I probably will never be in a theater this loud ever again. When, first off, Matt Murdock showed up in the beginning, theater roared. When Toby and Andrew showed up, we couldn't even hear. You couldn't even hear what they were saying. But I saw this movie 3 times in theaters. I loved it all 3 times in theaters. I watched it once at home. I loved it, but not as much as the theaters. I watched it again, and it's really, really silly and kind of not all that great until Toby and Andrew show up. But once Toby and Andrew show up, it's your childhood all over again. It's all these characters on screen together. Green Goblin showing yet again why he's one of the most menacing villains in cinematic history. End of the day, I love No Way Home, and it's so sad. Tony, Spider-Man is by himself at the end. It's just breaks your heart. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. I enjoyed this one a lot. I love the horror aspects throughout this. I love the how they're going through all these different dimensions. I love seeing all these different characters. You can see Charles Xavier in there, and it's not an A-tier movie, but it's a B-tier movie. I think it's one of the more better sequels of the MCU. More better. That's good English. But a lot of people hate on this one. For me, I enjoyed it a lot. When I came out of theater, I had a smile on my face, and I was like, dude, that was different. It's a little bit weird. And Xochitl Gomez, I mean, she's absolutely great. Loved her. Then we have Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm not lying to you, this might be my least favorite movie of all time. It's in the F tier. I've never been more disappointed. When Thor jumped on his broom and laughed like a witch, I just knew it wasn't for me. And you have Jane with cancer. Something so serious, and they make it just so silly and dumb. I can't stand this movie. I literally can't. Iron Man 2, haven't gone back to rewatch this one in damn near a decade, but I'll go D tier, because I enjoy it more than those other movies. I remember having fun and laughing several times throughout this movie, because Tony Stark himself is just great. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I think people forget how great this movie is. I gotta throw it in the S tier. This is one of those movies last year that I got so emotional, I got so invested in the underwater world, and how, like, the score just hits so different, and then the post-credits thing when, like, Zuri sees Prince T'Challa. Dude, I have chills right now just thinking about it. Then we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's been a weird year for the MCU in 2023, because it started with this one, and it introduced Kang, and did a very good job introducing Kang, but didn't really show that he's like the world beater, because the Ant-Man was going to, basically, he was whooping his ass. But nonetheless, I think it's a B-tier movie. One I've only seen once, and one I probably won't go back and rewatch, but nonetheless, I enjoyed all the same. Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3. This, my friends, is an S-tier movie. I only saw it the once in theaters, and I absolutely loved it. It's still one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I try to rewatch it at home. I just forget how morbidly sad this movie is throughout a lot of it, but it has the ultimate payoff at the end with the No Sleep Till Brooklyn scene, arguably the best scene the MCU's ever done in terms of action. And then the Dog Days Are Over, just everyone dancing and laughing because they made it through. I mean, I have chills thinking about it. I really do, and I need to rewatch this one before the end of the year. The Marvels. I enjoyed it somewhat. I did not hate it. I laughed. I loved Ms. Marvel throughout this movie, but I'm not going to put it in the F tier. I'm going to put it in the D tier. I think it's definitely better than the first Captain Marvel. I think it's better than Eternals, and Thor: Love and Thunder, and Thor: Dark World because of Ms. Marvel alone. I just really feel like this movie is pointless and plotless, but the ending was really good, and the post-credit scene, probably the best part about this movie. The Incredible Hulk. I've defended this movie forever. I always put it, like, pretty high. I'm like, dude, it's not that bad. It's that bad. It's just the black sheep of the MCU, and it's a weird point. And post-credit scene when Tony Stark shows up, like I'm recruiting a team. It's great. Edward Norton, it's weird to see him as Bruce Banner, a.k.a. the Hulk, and the ending when he fights Abomination. Sure, that's cool, but other than that, forget about it. Forget about it. Thor. The first Thor. I'm going to go C tier. This one's pretty cool because getting introduced to Asgard and the whole lore of these characters, that's what's pretty freaking epic. Another. Captain America, the first Avenger. I'm about to piss everyone off. D tier. I could damn near go F tier. I think this is my least favorite origin movie of the MCU. I have not rewatched it since theaters, which I was going into 7th grade when this movie came out. I'm 24 now, so probably due for a rewatch because I was like over 10 years ago. It was a long time ago, so I'll rewatch this one eventually, but not anytime soon. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, A tier. I know a lot of people think this is like the best MCU movie, which, honestly, you can make the argument for. I love the different vibes throughout this movie. It is a little bit more serious in the third act for me, kind of like, gets a little crazy, but when Steve and Bucky are fighting, he's like, I'm with you till the end of the line. I mean, Winter Soldier's one of the best villains inside the MCU. I don't care. He is a villain throughout this movie. He's the main villain. He's one of the craziest, baddest, scariest villains ever. Captain America Civil War. I actually rewatched the one the other day. For that reason, it's got to go in the S tier. Civil War is one of those movies that is like Avengers 2.5, like everyone says, for sure. But it's one of those movies that has the emotion behind it, unlike anything we've probably ever seen in the MCU before. It's Team Steve, Team Tony. I say this all the time. The safest hands are still our own. I'm Team Steve, but I'm also Team Tony. I love them all so much, and these characters all on screen together. Again, I love Steve and Tony together. Tony finds out that Bucky killed his parents, and he fights them at the end. That is the best part about this movie. It's in the S tier. And finally, The Avengers. The first movie I've ever seen 3 times in theaters. A little bit slow in the beginning, for sure. I can stand on that. But the Battle of New York is probably my favorite third act throughout the entirety of the MCU. Up there with Endgame. S tier. Third spot of the S tier. That would be my top three. Infinity War, Endgame, and the first Avengers. The first Avengers, one of the first crazy team-up movies we've ever seen. Really kind of set the tone for all the rest of the team-up movies we're going to get. All these characters work so well together. That's my secret captain. I'm always angry. Loki, arguably one of the best villains inside the MCU. And that's going to do it for my ranking of all 33 of these MCU movies. They're all in their proper tiers. Let me know what your ranking is down below in the comment section. Did you love the Marvels? Would it be higher than me? D tier? It's not terrible. Might go down next time. But we won't be doing an MCU ranking until Deadpool 3 next summer, July. Absolutely crazy. Lots more MCU videos coming over the next couple of days. Make sure you have a subscribe and notification bell hit so you don't miss out on those. Thank you guys so much for watching and for being here. And I'll see you in the next one.